You have a DNA match. 91% shared genetics, consistent with a biological child. The 23andMe notification read, and I stared at my phone screen in my kitchen at 7 a.m., coffee growing cold in my hand, trying to understand how I could have a biological child when I'd never been pregnant. The match's name is Oliver, age 4, and his mother would like to connect. I was 31 years old, unmarried, childless by choice, or so I'd thought, and the only time I'd ever provided genetic material to anyone was 5 years ago, when I donated eggs to help my infertile sister conceive. What I was about to discover would reveal a betrayal so complete, so calculated, so monstrous that it would take federal investigators, DNA databases, and 3 years of legal battles to fully unravel. The egg donation had been my sister Heather's idea. She'd been trying to conceive for 6 years. Endless rounds of fertility treatments, failed IVF cycles, the slow erosion of hope that comes with repeated loss. When her doctor suggested using donor eggs, she'd asked me, "You're my sister," she'd said, tears streaming down her face. "Any child from your eggs would still be family. Please, Natalie. You're my only hope." I'd agreed. How could I not? The process had been intensive. Hormone injections, monitoring appointments, a retrieval procedure that left me sore and exhausted for days. The clinic had harvested 14 eggs. A successful retrieval, they'd said. Heather had used 2 of those eggs, combined with her husband's sperm, to create embryos. Both had implanted successfully. 9 months later, she'd given birth to twins, a boy and a girl named Mason and Lily. I'd been at the hospital for their birth. I'd held them as newborns, watched them grow, been the doting aunt who spoiled them at holidays and babysat when Heather needed a break. I'd never thought to ask what had happened to the other 12 eggs. Now, staring at a DNA match on my phone, I was beginning to understand. I contacted the mother of Oliver, a woman named Patricia who lived in Oregon, 3,000 miles from my home in Massachusetts. "I'm so confused," she said during our video call. "The fertility clinic told us we were using anonymously donated eggs. They said the donor was a 28-year-old graduate student with no family medical history of concern. They never mentioned." She trailed off. "You're saying the donor is your sister?" "I'm saying I donated eggs to my sister for her personal fertility treatment. I never agreed to have them used for anyone else. But the clinic, they had all the paperwork. The donor consent forms, the medical releases. I signed consent forms authorizing the use of my eggs for Heather Mercer's fertility treatment. Nothing else." Patricia went quiet. On screen, I could see Oliver playing in the background, a dark-haired boy with my mother's nose and my father's chin. A child I'd never known existed, carrying half my genetic material. "What does this mean?" Patricia finally asked. "Legally? For Oliver? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out." The investigation began with the fertility clinic. I hired a lawyer, a specialist in reproductive law who'd handled cases of egg donation fraud before. She subpoenaed records, consent forms, and financial documentation related to my egg retrieval. What she found was damning. The clinic had recorded 14 eggs retrieved. 2 had been used for Heather's IVF cycle. The remaining 12 had been listed as donated to Clinic Egg Bank per donor consent. Except I'd never given that consent. The authorization form in my file, the one permitting the clinic to use excess eggs for other patients, bore a signature that wasn't mine. It was close, clearly practiced, but not quite right. The loops were too tight, the slant too steep. Someone had forged my signature. And according to the clinic's financial records, they'd sold those 12 eggs to couples across the country at $8,000 each. $96,000. My lawyer's face was grim as she laid out the implications. The clinic committed fraud by using forged consent. But the more serious question is, who forged your signature? I already knew the answer. Heather's reaction when I confronted her confirmed everything. "They were just going to waste," she said, as if that explained anything. The clinic was going to dispose of them. I thought, why not let them help other families? And yes, there was a payment involved, but I deserved that money. I went through the trauma of infertility. I was the one who suffered. You forged my signature. I gave you permission to help me have children. Those eggs came from your body because of my need. And the $96,000? Covered our IVF expenses. We were drowning in debt, Natalie. You have no idea what infertility costs. So you sold my genetic material without my consent, pocketed the money, and never told me? What were you going to do with those eggs anyway? You've made it perfectly clear you don't want children. Everyone knows you're too selfish to have kids. What did you just say? Heather's face hardened. You heard me. You've spent your whole life prioritizing your career, your freedom, your precious independence. Meanwhile, I've been desperate for a family. Those eggs meant nothing to you. They meant everything to me. They meant something to the 12 children who now exist because of them. Children I never consented to create. Children who are half mine, biologically, legally, ethically. They're not your children. You gave up any claim when you signed the donation forms. I signed forms authorizing you to use my eggs. You. Not the clinic. Not strangers across the country. I stood, shaking with rage. You committed fraud, Heather. You forged federal medical documents. You sold human genetic material under false pretenses. My lawyer says this could be prosecuted as trafficking. Heather went pale. That's ridiculous. Is it? Selling eggs without consent, using forged documentation to circumvent legal protections. That's exactly what trafficking statutes were designed to prevent. I'm your sister. You were my sister. Now you're a criminal. The federal investigation took 18 months. The FBI's Reproductive Crimes Unit, yes, that exists, took over once the scope of the fraud became clear. Heather wasn't the only one who'd exploited the system. The fertility clinic had a pattern of liberally interpreting consent forms, using remaining eggs from IVF patients without proper authorization. Heather had just been the most brazen. She was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and falsifying medical records. The clinic's director faced similar charges, along with violations of FDA regulations governing human tissue. During the trial, I testified about what had been done without my consent. I wanted to help my sister, I told the jury. I endured weeks of hormone injections, invasive procedures, physical discomfort, all because I loved her and wanted her to have the family she dreamed of. And she repaid that love by selling parts of me to the highest bidder. She says you didn't want children anyway, the defense attorney pressed. My reproductive choices are mine to make, not hers. Whether I wanted children or not is irrelevant. Those eggs were my genetic material, and I never authorized their sale. But you signed consent forms. I signed forms authorizing my sister to use my eggs. The forms authorizing the clinic to sell them were forged. Your own handwriting expert confirmed that. The defense had no response. Heather was convicted on all counts. The sentence was 5 years in federal prison, plus restitution of the $96,000 she'd received. The clinic director received 7 years. The clinic itself was shut down, its assets seized to compensate victims. But the legal resolution was just the beginning of the personal reckoning. I was now connected, genetically, to 12 children I'd never met. Some of their families reached out, grateful for the eggs that had given them children, horrified to learn the circumstances of their donation. Others wanted nothing to do with me, afraid that I might try to claim parental rights. I had no intention of disrupting anyone's family. Those children had parents who loved them. I was just the biological source, nothing more. But the DNA connections couldn't be undone. I would always be linked to those children, receiving notifications when they signed up for genetic testing services, potentially contacted by them as they grew older and had questions about their origins. My sister had spread my genetics across the country without my consent. That reality would follow me forever. The hardest part wasn't the trial or the investigation. It was telling my parents. They'd known about the egg donation, of course, had celebrated when Heather's twins were born, had been supportive of my decision to help my sister. They hadn't known about the forged consent, the sold eggs, the federal fraud charges. How could she do this? My mother kept asking. How could Heather? She convinced herself she was entitled, I said. That her suffering gave her rights over my body, my choices. She called me selfish for not wanting children, like my reproductive decisions were somehow about her. We never raised her to believe. I know, but somewhere along the way, she decided that what she wanted mattered more than what anyone else consented to. My father sat silent throughout the conversation, his face gray with shock. The children, he finally said. The 12 children out there. They're our grandchildren. Biologically? Partially. They're as related to you as Mason and Lily are. Different eggs, same genetic source. But we'll never know them. Probably not. Their families didn't ask for this any more than I did. My mother started crying. All those children, scattered across the country. And we'll never. I held her while she sobbed. This was what Heather had done. Not just to me, but to our entire family. She'd created connections that couldn't be severed and relationships that couldn't be formed. She'd turned my genetic material into a commodity, scattered it to the winds, and left everyone to deal with the consequences. Heather served 3 years of her sentence before being released on parole. She's required to pay restitution until the $96,000 is repaid, a process that will take decades on her reduced income. She's barred from working in healthcare or any field involving access to personal medical information. Her children, the twins I'd donated eggs to help create, live with their father now. The divorce was finalized while Heather was in prison. She's tried to contact me twice since her release. The first time, I didn't respond. The second time, she sent a letter. Natalie, I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. What I did was wrong, not just legally, but morally. I violated your trust, your body, your autonomy. I told myself I was owed something because of my suffering, but that was a lie. My pain didn't give me rights over you. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand how I became someone capable of this. The infertility broke something in me, not just my body, but my sense of boundaries. I started seeing everything through the lens of what I'd lost, what I needed, what I deserved. I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a resource. That's not an excuse. There is no excuse. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. Heather. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote back. Heather, you sold my genetic material to strangers. You forged documents. You created 12 children I never consented to and will never know. You stood in court and watched me testify about the most intimate violation possible. And even then, you tried to defend yourself by calling me selfish. I'm glad you're in therapy. I hope it helps you become someone capable of genuine remorse, not just remorse that you got caught. But I can't forgive you. Not because I'm holding on to anger. I've worked hard to let that go. But because some betrayals are too complete. You didn't just violate my trust. You violated my body, my identity, my genetic legacy. You scattered pieces of me across the country without permission and profited from it. There's no coming back from that. I hope you find peace. I hope you become a better person. But I can't be part of your healing. Not after what you did. Natalie. It's been 3 years since the trial. I've made peace with what happened, as much as anyone can. I receive occasional messages from families whose children share my DNA. Updates on milestones, questions about medical history. I answer what I can and maintain boundaries around what I can't. Oliver, the boy whose DNA match started everything, is now 7. His mother sends me photos sometimes. He has my smile, the same slightly crooked grin I see in my own mirror. I didn't choose him. I didn't consent to his existence. But he exists anyway, and he's loved by parents who wanted him desperately. That's something. Maybe that's enough. Heather told everyone I was too selfish to have kids. The truth is more complicated. I was a woman who made a gift of her body to help her sister, and had that gift stolen, sold, and scattered without consent. I'm not selfish. I'm violated. And no amount of prison time or therapy or apologies can undo that violation. But I've built a life on the other side of it. A life where I control what happens to my body. A life where no one else gets to decide what I give or what I keep. That's not selfishness. That's survival.